Well, James, thanks so much for joining us today for a chat. In terms of the wellness space within the building, which of course has typically been in the basement, particularly when we think about end of trip facilities, but more holistically now, this idea of wellness, which I know you've been a massive champion of at 22 Bishopsgate. How do you think that might change now? Do you think there might be more on the agenda going forward around catering for a larger space, or there is more variety, there's a higher level of amenity within that wellness space of buildings?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, isn't it? You're a keen cyclist, and I don't know what you've experienced, but over the past 6 weeks, one of the best things I think the government did when we did lockdown was say every day you're allowed to go out and exercise. Thank heavens for that. I've spoken to one or two people who are in other parts of the world, and actually they haven't been able to do that. And I think that would have been a very different experience. Actually, it'd been a very different experience if we had lockdown with the sort of weather we're having the last couple of days. We've been very lucky with 6 weeks of beautiful weather, which has made it all an awful lot better. And the whole tone of working from home has changed with the weather. But what's been clear, as I don't know if you noticed, Luke, but when I've been going out on my cycle rides, which I tend to do in the evening now, is just how many bikes are out, how many people are out there jogging, how many people are out there exercising. And I think that has been and people who clearly haven't done it before, haven't done it regularly. And I think that is so uplifting. Don't start me on Park Run and that has been cancelled, but I can understand why. For me, that is the greatest community event out there. But I think people have really recognised and felt that benefit of well-being, and everything you see on your social media about home cooking and bread baking and time with their families. And I know these are good things that have come out of a very difficult situation, and a lot of people are suffering through this, and we shouldn't underestimate that. So all the talk about wellness, I think, which was happening, I think that people can now see and feel firsthand what those benefits are. And as we go back to the office, then the office is going to have to replicate some of those good things that we're able to do very easily at home, or those fortunate enough we're able to do very easily. So I think there will be, a renewed emphasis on that. Again, it will be one of these things that gets accelerated through this adversity. Sorry, your question was, is wellness just going to be put in the basement? Well, sorry, our end of trip facilities, which is all about cycling, and Five and Heart has been working on with us. And by the way, it's not just cycling. The call this morning, we're talking about how we're going to encourage walkers and how we're going to encourage joggers. And it's not just cyclists who come in clad in Lycra, it's for all cyclists. And for us, that's going to be the measure of success. It's not just how many, it's the diversity. And actually what we want to see is bike parks that are empty at night and full during the day. It's not just a numbers game. Let's be a lot more critical about this. Commercially, sensibly, it's going to be in the basement because that's less valuable space, and therefore it's much easier as to provide it there. But then if we think about other exercise we do, whether it's maybe you go to gymnasiums, generally they're down in the basement or in the low value space. My colleague Harry and I, we were doing an event the other day, a couple of years ago, and for our training we did hot yoga. We used to do this kind of hot yoga studio. And that, by the way, is the hardest exercise I've ever done. But that was done down in a kind of gungy basement, kind of smells bad. So there is that element. But actually, wellness, I think it won't just be seen as a cost and something that we need to be seen to do. I think people will realise the genuine benefits of doing it, not just in terms of attracting talent and retaining talent, but actually people's productivity during the day will be better if they have got opportunities to exercise throughout. And actually, in our building, we've got a gymnasium, we've got a wellness area. And in fact, they are on levels. Gosh, it's a tall building, but they're on levels like 25 and 41, and the opportunity cost. I mean, the value of that is offices would be really, really high. Some of the highest value offices in London. But we've just felt that it would be beneficial to create this wellness space for the benefit of all the other offices in the building to put it there.
Yeah, and that's that's so great to see, obviously, because that is almost a new, fresh thinking. It's a new concept to do that, on that sort of level. And I think it's it's admirable, and it'd be great to see exactly how well utilised that is.
Well, I think there's been a lot of and a lot of examples, Luke, in terms of what people are doing to encourage physical exercise. But what we have seen over the past 2-3 years is recognition towards mental well-being, and I'd say in terms of the corporates and the enlightened corporates we speak to, they see mental well-being being as important as physical well-being.
Absolutely, and as I said before, I think it's that acceptance now, isn't it, that the two are very much connected. I think everybody kind of accepts that now, and how a big part of the one's happiness in the day of the office, 9 to 5, the Monday to Friday, is a big part of that is the commute. And I think you've kind of alluded to it at various points here that this commute now, with working from home, the commute is pretty much non-existent. It's from the bed to the kitchen for a lot of people, or from the bed to the living room, and how that commute does have an effect on your mental health and your productivity levels, and how that might change, because as you say, it never is a numbers game, and I think planning requirements sometimes lulls people into that sense that it is a numbers game, but actually that's not the reality, is it, when buildings go live and when you're trying to actually engage people to use the space. And I wonder how the commute may change, because the thing that you picked up on, I think, is also really key, is that now as you go out, as you say, there's more cyclists on the road, it's quieter, everybody's out jogging, that it's actually opened up an opportunity for people that wouldn't ordinarily cycle to now get their confidence up on quieter roads. And perhaps, we don't know the effects of this, but perhaps 6 months or a year down the line, we've got people that say, hey, do you know what? I'm going to try commuting into work by bike, because I tried it. I never thought I would. And I've now got the confidence to do so. And I've gone out and bought a bike. And how that might sort of change how much people are traditionally coming into offices by, train and tube, particularly in these central London locations. Be interesting to see, won't it?
This could be dangerous, Luke, because if you and I are going to start talking about bikes, it might take over the rest of the session. Getting confidence back, getting people confident of bikes is super important, and for that, that is a whole bigger issue about safety on the roads, and I could talk a lot about that, some from first-hand experience. This might not be the right thing to share now, but I've just been doing a little bit of cycling. My daughter, who used to do a bit, she's for various reasons, she's trying to get her confidence back on the road, and over the weekend, I didn't find it a very comfortable place to be. I don't know what you felt, but there was more traffic on the roads this weekend, and I think a lot of people have got used to driving on roads where no one else is on them, and I sensed a little bit more tension between cyclists and drivers than I have before. That is a whole issue about how we make the roads safe for cyclists. Is it a cultural thing, like in France, where you just accept each other and it seems to work very well, or do we have to have signs and paths and everything else? And everyone's got their views on that. But the whole cycling into the office thing, we touched on it. It's not just for like clad sort of single speeders or anything else. It's getting everyone in there, and our measure of success, as I said, is about the diversity of bikes that are in there. It's not just about the numbers. It's sort of this density thing. People say, "Well, I've got this number of bike spaces. I've got this." For me, it's the quality of bike spaces and seeing them used, and that is as much or more about the end of trip facilities and the environment that people are actually commuting into and commuting out of. Commuting is easy if you can go in, you can have a shower, you can put a shirt on, you can leave. As soon as that becomes difficult, people will not commute and they'll fall back into old habits. And then we've got this whole issue about how people are going to be getting in and out of work, particularly in the short term. With social distancing, as we move out of lockdown, and we're being encouraged, and quite rightly, to go back to the office and use it better, and start growing or boosting the economy. Everyone's talking about, well, how are you going to fit out your offices so everyone's 2 meters apart? How are people going to sit, and how are they going to do this? And are you going to share your kitchen? And are people going to have to bring their own food? Well, that's fine, but it's like having this, having this huge bath, but actually what's going to limit the size of that bath, the number of people in the bath, isn't the size of the bath. It's actually the size of the hose of the water that's filling it. This is transport. How are people going to get from home into the office? And, clearly the trains and public transport will be quieter, but that is going to put a renewed emphasis on people walking and on people cycling. And, it's only going to accelerate that, which is a good thing. Actually, one other thing you said about, commuting when you're at home, I think it takes me longer now to get up and get to my desk switched on here than it does actually when I had an office to go to, because there are far many more distractions for me to do it. I'm hopeless if there's a meeting before 9 o'clock at the moment. I really struggle. I reckon it's about an hour and a half between the two, and it used to be I was working in an office.
Yeah, no, I hear you. James, tell me, in your view, what positives do you see, or what is perhaps the one big positive to come out of all this?
Well, I guess we touched on a few positives that's coming out of a very drastic situation. I guess for me that we've talked about work and the office and some society things and some of the learnings and how good things can come out of adversity. I think for me the big thing is at some point I think the pandemic is going to be addressed. I think we have to assume at some point that will happen. But then perhaps we should start focusing on what the next big global crisis will be, and that must be climate change. And I think what this has proven is that if something happens in the world and everybody has to come together to address it, we've proven that we can do it. And I think it's just going to be critical that we do so again when we have to address what might be an even bigger issue, which is that, as I said, of climate change.
And there are, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but there are glimmers of change that we might, the lockdown might start easing, and there'll be some return to the office in some capacity in the next few weeks. When that does happen for you personally, and the lockdown is lifted, I mean, what are you most looking forward to?
Oh, yikes. You probably want something really uplifting here.
Not necessarily, just something that you've not been able to do.
Well, I can't get it. Sorry, you've asked the question now. Last year, my wife was involved in a very serious cycling accident, and she is now in a long-term care environment, a very specialist brain injury place in Putney. And they've been in quarantine now for 6 weeks. I haven't been able to see her for 6 weeks. And so, to answer your question candidly, the first thing I am going to do is go to the hospital and go and see my wife. I guess in a kind of a slightly more, well, that's uplifting, but in another vein, just around the corner from the hospital, there's a great pub. And every time I'd seen her, it was the right time, I'd sort of pop down there, just reflect on life with a pint. And actually having a pint in a pub surrounded by other people, even on your own, is very different from having a pint sitting in your home in a garden and everything else. So let's say they are going to be the two things I'm going to do first.
We wish you well with that. Wish your wife well with that.
Thank you,
James.
Thank you. No, you've already been very helpful, so really appreciate that.
And thank you very much for your time. It's been great to have a chat with you today, James.
No, always is, Lou. And let's make sure we go out for that ride when we're allowed.